Pat Stevens on townwide drainage. But Pat, I think you have some assistance on this presentation, correct?
Yeah, definitely brought some backup, some additional people that are heavily involved in that effort and that program tonight. So,
Todd's with you.
Ready to go? Okay, so we're here tonight to talk about the establishment of a townwide drainage district. That would be a drainage district across the entirety of the town instead of a large portion of it that we currently have. So this is something that my predecessor Joe Herbst had worked on for a few years and felt was needed. As I have been here only about a year, I certainly see why his dedication was to that when I look at what we were able to do in our stormwater maintenance program, which deals with all of the common drainage ways and stormwater treatment facilities in town. So we put some information together for everyone to look at and review on some of the key points of that. Mary, in a second, is going to talk about compliance with our MS4 program. We, as a town, are an MS4 and have a lot of compliance regulations that we have to complete per the requirements of the program. So it's a heavy lift, much greater than when drainage districts started to be established. It's increased a lot over the years, especially around 2000, when some of these regulations got formalized and passed on to the towns to carry them on with really no financial support. So that's a key factor. I also have my foreman, Joe Merrick, here with me tonight to talk about the actual operation that we do, where you see us out in the community working on these drainage ways, be it roadways, swales, ditches, or sometimes streams, depending on what's going on. So he's going to touch on that as we go through this. But we're going to start with Mary's portion on the MS4 program. I'll turn it over to her.
Yes, so I'm going to outline kind of the basics of the MS4 program. So MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. The town is its own MS4. The village is its own MS4, so we regulate within our own boundaries. We don't regulate the village. They enforce this program themselves. So MS4s are required to develop a stormwater management program that will reduce the amount of pollutants carried by stormwater during storm events to water bodies to the maximum extent practicable. The goal of the program is to improve waterway quality and recreational use of waterways. So the entire town is bound by the requirements of this program. I think that's really important to consider when we are looking at a town-wide drainage district. It's not just the subdivisions that come online in town that has to be compliant with this program. It's every portion of the town. So to help us comply with this program, the Stormwater Coalition of Monroe County was established in 2000, and Webster is a partner of this program. There's 29 municipal members, and it supports the town's efforts to execute the program, and it assists us with an annual report that's required by the DEC, training our staff, and then additional reporting that's due throughout the year. There are 6, they call them minimum control measures, so that's what MCM stands for in all these items that are a part of this program. So it's public education, public participation, illicit discharge, construction stormwater management, post-construction stormwater management, and municipal pollution prevention. So I'm going to go over all of these items. So the first one, public education. The coalition and the town are tasked with developing a program to educate residents and businesses. We have to make educational documents publicly available. So at the, I know at the rec center and the town hall, there's little pamphlets that we get from the Monroe County Stormwater Coalition that are available to the public. They encourage us to present at school and community events, and I know that the county also does a lot of that on behalf of the town and the other communities. Promote the H2O Hero campaign. I think hopefully everyone's seen this guy out on the billboards around the community. And then post signage in parks and near stormwater features. So over in between town hall and the courthouse, there's a rain garden, which is a stormwater feature, and there's a sign posted there that explains how that works. And I think there's some signage in the parks about picking up after your pets, as that's a big pollutant in stormwater and other things of that nature. The second, public participation. So the town is asked to present the annual report to the town board each year. So that will be at our next workshop. I will be talking more about the MS4. And then we also host a hazardous waste collection at the highway department, and we encourage our residents to utilize the Eco Park, which is a Monroe County facility. We have storm drain marking across the town. I don't know if you've ever walked through your neighborhood and seen that sturgeon that's located by your catch basin to remind you that whatever goes down the drains doesn't get treated and goes eventually to our water bodies. And then the county also promotes the use of rain barrel construction, and I know they used to do demonstrations and show people how to make them. I don't know what COVID's done with that training, but hopefully it comes back if they've temporarily suspended it. So I would say the first two measures are heavily helped by the coalition. Each municipality pays into that program annually, so they have a bigger pot of money to deal with the public outreach and campaigns and things of that nature. So we're getting to parts of the program that the town is more heavily involved in. So the Illicit Discharge program is, the town is tasked with discovering and eliminating illicit discharges. So this is cross connections with the sanitary sewer going into the stormwater. If there's dumpsters that are leaking next to our catch basins and there's no treatment there. If there's painters that are just spraying off brushes and letting it go into the storm sewer. I actually witnessed a mobile pet grooming vehicle just open up their soapy water in a parking lot once and just let all of the suds and soapy water go right into the catch basin. Not in Webster, but in a town before that I was living in, and it just let it go down the drain. So I'm guessing they did that somewhat regularly. So that's something that we wouldn't allow. So we're supposed to inspect all of our outfalls, so that's any opening where a piped discharge is going out into a surface water once every 5 years, and right now the town of Webster has about 600 mapped outfalls. So that's over 100 that we're supposed to be inspecting every year, and we work on that. We were doing paper copy inspections. Last year we got trained by the county. They lent us a tablet to fill out an inspection and take photos mobilely, so that was a handy tool that they were able to assist us with, and I think we'll continue using that this summer. We also train and educate our staff and public, and then maintain records of these inspections. We have them mapped in our GIS system, and keep record of any detections of discharges that were illicit and how we remediated them. The next measure is construction stormwater management. So this is the development in town, and Webster has arguably more development going on than some of the other towns in the county. So this is a little bit bigger effort on our part than some of the other members of the coalition. So we train staff on the permit requirements, erosion and sediment control, and the design standards that need to be implemented. We review the stormwater design and the construction controls when it's going through the permitting and planning process with the town. We permit the activity as the MS4. We grant the permit to the operator of the site. And then we review, they're called SWIP, Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plans. They do inspections either weekly or bi-weekly on these construction sites. So the town gets sent the inspections and we have to review them for compliance. And then we also have to perform our own construction site inspections and then enforce the violations, which that alone can be a time-consuming effort. It's typically not a priority of a contractor to have all these measures in place and keep up with them. And I personally took all the photos on this slide. So there's definitely some room for improvement in our town, and we're working to get our contractors on board with this. The fifth measure, this is a lot of what Pat's going to be talking about with what Highway works on. So they train their staff on the permit, erosion control, and design standards for the stormwater infrastructure that's put in most of the time by developers and then turned over to the town. So we have to inspect and maintain municipal stormwater infrastructure and facilities. So that's our stormwater ponds, drainage ways, piping, catch basins, streams, and other things that they'll discuss later. And another portion of this is that something that my department handles is coordinating the review and enforcement of commercial and privately owned stormwater inspections. So any of our commercial or private partners in town that have put in their own stormwater facility and it's maintained by themselves, we require that a licensed engineer perform an inspection every year. So we are doing that outreach right now to make sure that we get all those reports into the town and then follow up with any issues that were discovered during that. And then the sixth measure is a municipal pollution prevention program. So it's up to the town to develop and implement a pollution prevention and good housekeeping program for the municipal operations and facilities. So specifically for the town, that would be the highway department and the parks department where they have their facility. And then make sure that they're training their staff on these best practices and perform self-assessments to make sure that it's being followed through. I also want to mention, I know when Joe Herbst was here last year, there was a draft permit that was forthcoming, and it has been published. There are a lot of things that would increase the effort of the municipality. So a couple of the major items that are in that draft permit, which is currently being reviewed in Albany. There's a lot of municipalities that are finding that the requirements of the program would just add too much of a workload and cost. So they're working through what the final permit will be, but I'm sure at the end of the day it will be more work than what is currently required of the town. So we'll have to perform catch basin inspections, so we'll have to inspect, document, and keep records on every single catch basin in town. And we have to inspect all of them at least once every 5 years, and there's approximately 4,500 in the town. And so currently, I guess Pat would speak better to this, but I think that, do you do regular inspections or just as maintenance concerns arise?
You know, we do inspections, but a lot of times they are tied to the other maintenance, to the road maintenance that we're doing. We obviously focus a lot of them in areas that we're going to do work or have upcoming work, or that we're seeing a lot of problems. That's you know, a big part of this is that our maintenance programs that we're able to implement right now, based on the budget and the funding that's available, need to be increased. You know, that's the big driver behind all of this. And so anything on inspections is generally
the closest we come to a routine one would be every 8 years. The roads are targeted to be oil and stone every 8 years, and prior to doing that, we do a catch basin inspection. All the road oil and stone. Every 8 years, we inspect the catch basins on the roads that we're going to surface treat. So right now, it's on an 8-year rotation, not 5.
And the documentation of those inspections would be more robust and time-consuming on the town's behalf if and when this gets added to the permit. There would be increased construction inspection frequency by municipalities. Right now, municipality only has to perform their own SWIP inspections at a certain frequency, and it would be increased quite dramatically with this new permit. We'd have to develop a formal stormwater pollution protection plan for our municipal operations and then perform those inspections more frequently. There would be additional staff training required of our highway, parks, and engineering staff, additional mapping requirements and tracking in our GIS system, additional development of processes and procedures and record keeping for different aspects of the program, and then additional public involvement and education. There would be more responsibility on the individual MS4 to do the public outreach and education versus leaning heavily on the coalition like we do right now. And then my last slide here is just an example of some estimated costs based on these upcoming changes of the MS4 program. So to do the inspections of the catch basins, which is approximately $900 a year, I would estimate that being a $15,000 to $20,000 labor cost to do that. The increased construction inspection frequency, so that's going out to the sites, that's taking photos, writing up the inspection, showing where the disturbances and the practices are being implemented on site. That increase would probably be about $12,000 a year in labor for staff. If we had to hire an engineer to develop SWIPs for our municipal operations, and it would probably be $10,000 to $15,000 a site, plus an annual $2,500 to inspect it if it wasn't self-performed by the town. And then additional staff training. With the number of staff that touch this program, I estimated at about $6,000 a year. And then just keep making our mapping more robust and tracking more things in our GIS, implementing more, adding more data such as invert elevations and size of catch basins and things of that nature. Just putting an investment of $2,000 to $5,000 a year on making that more robust, which could be even higher depending on how much staff and time we have to dedicate towards that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mary, for that portion. I'm going to take over this next section. So, you know, that last page there is one that starts to speak to the financial portion of this, which obviously establishing the drainage district will generate more funds for those. But right now, the funds that are generated by the large portion of drainage district that we do have established in town are primarily focused at the actual maintenance of physically of the drainage ways that you know, keep our roads from flooding, keep you know, the mass area of drainage functioning properly. Right now, all of those funds are directed at that effort, and we're still falling behind. You know, these programs, our maintenance cycles are much longer than we want them to be. The amount of infrastructure that has been taken on in the development of Webster over the last 40 years since they started putting these in is larger than the current fee and district can support. So the initial establishment of a townwide drainage district would allow us to improve those efforts. And then beyond that, we need to continue to plan for a lot of what Mary went over. You know, that last page there, that's a very, very new development. As I said, the initial implementation of the MS4 program on towns was back in 2000 when a lot of regulations came up. Now it's going to be increased even more. So there's additional planning that needs to continue to be done on this topic, but the establishment of the townwide drainage district really is the first step. So with that, the section I have here is, you know, the purpose of a drainage district is really to fund the MS4 requirements of the MCM 5 portion, which is the portion that we, like I just said, is most of our funds are targeted at right now. They're the post-construction stormwater management that are imposed by the federal government, EPA, and New York State DEC. The execution within that is to maintain common waterways and infrastructure. That's roadside swales, catch basins, basically anything that conveys water to our receiving waters, which in our case is Lake Ontario. So those are the things that we're doing. Reviewing maintenance of commercial treatment facilities, which Mary touched on, reviewing new development plans in conformance with state standards. Staying strong on those efforts there, reviewing new commercial development, making sure we're bringing on our contractors, our developers in town as partners in this is a huge part of this. We've unfortunately seen a great deal of infrastructure that hasn't had the life expectancy that it should, or is needing maintenance sooner than it should, that is compounding this issue in a big way. It's an effort that Mary and I and Joe and everybody in the department is really trying to focus on this year, working with developers to bring these requirements to the forefront of their mind and try to be preventative about eliminating more of this infrastructure, needing more time, money, and maintenance than is needed. In the first 5 years or so, the inspection results of these facilities that we take dedication of in our neighborhoods should need very minimal maintenance, very basic preventative maintenance, mowing, things of that nature. Anything beyond that is really unacceptable in a lot of ways. So we're working very hard on that front to improve those areas. And then we obviously have annual reporting with our facilities, documentation of the drainage facilities. I mentioned up above that one of the execution portions is to maintain common waterways. So that's sometimes a term that's difficult to grasp. So down at the bottom, I have that a common drainage way is one that receives runoff from multiple residents and is under town easement or under jurisdiction of other agencies. So some of our drainage ways that are streams or creeks are under the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers or the New York State DEC. Those, we actually have to get permits to go in and do a lot of alternation other than basic maintenance like taking trees out of them and things of that nature. So it has to be in one of those things. So just because you're in a drainage district, if there isn't an easement over a portion of your property and it doesn't contribute to anyone other than yourself, then that's not what these funds are for. If there's a swale or a catch basin or a drainage that maybe 5, 10, or 20 houses all utilize, those are the types of infrastructure that our program maintains, not your private property, essentially. So I just wanted to clarify that. This next image is a map. This map shows the 5 major watersheds that we currently have in town, and the red portion represents the parcels that are currently in a drainage district. So as you can see, a large portion of the town is already in a drainage district. The other important thing to remember with this is there are not portions of town that aren't in a watershed. So what that means is there are no parcels in town that don't benefit from a drainage district in some way. Even if you don't have a piece of infrastructure in your yard or a swale, the fact that you can drive down your roads or that in big rainstorms your area isn't flooded is because the common drainage ways in the area are maintained and functioning properly. So it might be great if you're way up on a hill and you'd never see water in a storm event, but you probably wouldn't be able to get from your house anywhere using the roads if the drainage district funds weren't maintaining them. So that's a important thing to remember. A lot of the larger portions on here actually that don't look like they're within a drainage district. Some of them are large parks, common land, things of that nature, not residential areas. There's a lot in there. So that's what this map is showing. The major watersheds are 4 Mile Creek, Mill Creek, there's a Webster watershed, Shipbuilders Creek, and Irondequoit Creek on the west side of town. So all of those collect and drain to the lake. Each one of those areas, therefore everybody in them needs the waterways to be maintained to make sure that they continue to drain to the lake and don't back up, flood, and cause damage to property. So that's what this map here shows. Next one. So our current drainage districts, I just touched on a little bit, but they originally began being established in the 80s to support the maintenance and reporting efforts by the town, which at that time were significantly less. Saw Mary's presentation on what's currently required and what is going to be required very soon. None of those things were really in place when the concept of the drainage district started to be implemented. It was purely to keep streams and waterways, like you see on the right of this image, free of trees, like you see looming over there, which is becoming more and more common. It's one of our most common calls, and it can really back up flow if you're not careful. But Currently, approximately 78% of town residents are in a drainage district. And essentially the 22% of residents that are not currently in a drainage district have been receiving the benefits of the maintenance, but have not contributed to the cost. So the concept that I just mentioned on the map, that everybody's property, when it rains, rain lands on your property, it doesn't go straight into the ground. It collects in some way, even if it's a minor form, eventually gets to a stream or conveyance of some kind and flows to the lake. Those have been being maintained throughout town, regardless if you're in a district or not, throughout time. So then you have commercial properties. The majority of our commercial properties are required to maintain their own individual stormwater facilities. So these are the ponds, forebays, things of that nature. But they still discharge into these common drainage ways. So they also need to contribute to drainage districts in their own way, which is a little bit different than a residence, but they're still utilizing those waterways for their flow from their facilities. And then on that topic, in current drainage districts, Joe manages our current efforts on that front, the different things we do at houses. He runs the day-to-day of all of the requests, concerns, complaints that come in. So I was going to have him talk a little bit about just what we do on a day-to-day when you see us out there, what we've got going on, and then the level of effort, or not effort, but the amount of issues we're able to address in a year, in a season, which is an issue. So expand on that a little bit.
Some of the things we respond to, that already mentioned, the trees down in creeks, that's been popular the last few years. We also do maintenance work on the ponds. Some of the older ones need to be desilted, tree removal around them. We try to stay on top of the newer ones, basically maintain them with mowing efforts. Some of the bigger swales in town, same thing, mowing maintenance. Some of them need improvements, so we'll target a few of them over the years, swales and things, to make improvements if we've experienced flooding, increase the size of culverts. And we're finding some of the aging subdivisions, the 40-year-old ones, steel pipes are rotting out and they're starting to need replacement. So that's a bigger problem that we're seeing now. That's about it.
Yeah, those are the major things that, you know, Joe's taking calls on a daily basis, and yeah, some of that infrastructure is reaching its life expectancy, and we're seeing additional or more larger areas that we're going to have to attack, in addition to wanting to increase the frequency of all of those activities that he just mentioned, the mowing and the clearing. At times now we get calls, and if it's not a severe thing that's actually blocking water, it can take an entire year or more before we can get there to deal with the situation, and we'd like to be more preventative than that. So we're talking about the establishment of townwide drainage districts, so I wanted to just go into a couple of the impacts and opportunities for the residents that go along with this. First and foremost, the townwide drainage district currently, the way it is paid for is an annual fee on your tax bill. In 2021, that fee was $42 per household, or per tax bill, which is just a flat fee for each individual tax bill. And again, 78% of our residents paid that in 2021, or were billed it. I can't speak to exactly what was paid, but they were billed it. So that is what the people that would be incorporated in the townwide that currently aren't would be looking at as an impact. Opportunities that are available, however, as being inside a drainage district, is if there are areas that could be enhanced or improved for drainage that benefit multiple residents, a plan can be made, easements can be established, and once the initial improvement, if needed, is made to the area, the town would take dedication via easement and maintain that in the future. So if there's areas that are issues, we can plan accordingly to improve them and then be able to maintain them long-term, which would take it off of an individual's plate, as long as that particular feature benefits more than just one individual. The Incorporation of the remaining 22% of residents into the townwide drainage district will also allow our maintenance cycles to be shortened, which will provide more timely response to the issues that are identified and called in on a regular basis by our residents. If there are existing drainageways in your area that have conditions impacting flow, the additional dollars generated by incorporating the remaining 22% of the residents into a townwide drainage district would help us be able to address those issues as well. So that's existing streams, existing swales, different things that have trees in them. This would go to fund a more timely response to that as well. So the first one is more of a development of new features or adjustment of features, addition of pipe, catch basins, things that may drain the area better. The second one is being able to expand the areas we're impacting with our current maintenance efforts. So the next steps to establishing the townwide drainage district for the board to consider would be to begin the district creation process so that a board resolution can be presented and voted on prior to September. That's the deadline for getting the fee onto the tax bill for 2023. So in order to implement this, that would be the process. And then the next steps beyond that, once that process is done and established, would be to improve the maintenance compliance by planning for our MS4 program in 2023. So that's the end for me, unless there are questions.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you foresee getting individual additional easements, or is your expectation that the process of getting it, or having a townwide district will do away with the need for getting further easements?
So no, I would still get further easements. Once we have an easement, there's a certain list of things we maintain within it, primarily in a drainage district, the flow of drainage. So we would still do mowing, clearing of trees, anything that impacted the drainage feature within the easement. To open that up to all portions of the property and not need easement anymore, I think would be not the goal of this. It would be too broad of a stroke. I think it would encumber some of the properties in ways where it would give us jurisdiction to go in and do things beyond maybe what would be a resident, so it might have a negative impact on the resident. And then secondly, we really do want to define these areas and make sure that we can put them on a preventative maintenance program long term. That would be the reason to establish individual easements for any features we were taking over.
So that's going to require going to each individual property owner and obtaining an easement.
Correct.
And if they don't want to do that, then we would have to condemn. Correct.
So in general, yes. So if there was a condition on private property currently that was negatively impacting multiple residents, we could implement that process to do it. Primarily, most of the things I see are areas that are currently wet or not draining well, where the residents would actually want to improve the drainage. I can't really, it would have to be a pretty extreme situation for us to go through the condemnation process.
We had to do that, as you know,
Yeah.
a few years back,
Yeah, but that's, I think, kind of a unique condition. I wouldn't want to set up the district based on a more rare situation that we may see here and there. I just don't see that being a common occurrence where we have to do that, where there'd be a privately owned
Well,
piece of property.
it would be nice not to, but what
Yeah.
I'm saying is obviously you can't control, you have 22% of the homeowners, which is 9,000 plus,
Sure.
that even a small percentage of that could hold up the entire process.
Yeah, that is an issue to overcome. I wouldn't want this to be the key to unlocking that. There still has to be a certain amount of collaboration in order to do improvements. I can't think of any instances right now, necessarily areas or programs that we would like to go in and implement features where we can't. Like I said, primarily with these drainage type of things, individuals want to improve it. And I don't know that there's a particular way, or this is the right way to solve the issue of a single individual holding back improvements for a large group. I think that still needs to be handled on
I
an
guess
individual basis.
what I'm trying to understand is the imposition of a town-wide district would basically give the town the opportunity to create one large district as opposed to all these separate extensions to
Yes,
subdivision districts that we have now.
correct.
So everything would sort of be merged or incorporated into the town-wide district. I understand that, I understand the concept. My only concern is going in and getting easements, which again is an ideal. We want to have the specific authority and right to go in. However, you do need under due process to obtain that right. And
Yeah,
if people are not going to do it voluntarily, and not everybody's going to agree that it is in their best interest,
right.
then we're going to have problems. So.
As we do now. So currently, you know, the drainage districts that are established in various areas, we still maintain the things that are under easement, and we have a limited ability in most cases to change things that are not under easement, even in the current districts. I'm not proposing to change that.
No, I think for emergency purposes, you can go in now. That's not the issue. I think the issue is what you're talking about is something more, I'll say, routine.
Yeah.
Which is a good idea. You want to forestall problems and not just react to emergencies.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of, again, the legal and administrative process of getting this going.
Sure.
You said, I'm sorry, I'm
No, I love it. Keep going. No, Charlie, keep going.
The question about, you had mentioned that you want to get it done by, or get the district formed by this fall. Early fall.
Yes. Yeah, we're April now, so there's some time, it is a process to go through, but the goal would be to get that process started with the goal of having it ready in September. I mean, if something happened, there was issues and whatnot, at least we would be that much farther along in the process.
Is this dependent on any grants or anything like that we need at this point? I mean, is there a reason why that date is? I mean, that's just a date you put in? Sort of?
No, that date is tied to the tax roll and the assessor's role in actually getting the fee onto the roll for
so
2023.
there's a purpose for that date?
Yeah, the date is tied to the ability to be able to generate those funds for the 2023 season and get the benefits, the improvements to the program started next year. Would be tied to the September date.
You know, it's funny, if you go back one screen, I love the fact, Charlie, that you started off the questions and your brain is thinking now, right? What looks like an innocent bullet point of begin the district creation process so that the board resolution can be done, presented and voted on prior to September. Seems like a simple enough statement. Between May and September, Charlie, I think you're gonna probably have a lot of research or work to do, maybe, because I really don't know at this point, what is the process from May 1st to September 1st, which is, I think, a 4-month period, legally, to do this. I know what probably the end of the process is some type of resolution, establishment of the district, local law. I have no idea how we get from where we're at now to that, and that's gonna fall right in your lap.
Well, yeah, and I sort of gave a very, very brief and short heads up to our finance director who's here tonight. And so I think I would have to discuss, he and I would have to discuss how we're going to do this. The funding is going to be a big issue depending on how it's funded. The town obviously has more leeway if we would have to borrow, if we would have to expend further monies to do it. Anyway, that's something, I mean, it's not anything you have to decide tonight, but there are some.
Yeah, that's,
that have to be looked at.
I can't envision, but I've said I don't know what I don't know, that there is any expenditure monies to set up this district, but that through the research, that might not be the case.
That would be a good thing.
Yeah.
We still have to do filings with the state, however, to
Sure. You know what's interesting, and I give the example that happened in the last year to show you that, I guess it kind of highlights the inequity of one house having $42 on their tax bill as a drainage district charge on their town tax bill, and another house, the 22% right now that don't have it, 22% of the residential units. We had a situation that Mr. Marapies was very involved in, so were you, Charlie, setting up the easement of 3 houses on a road that had a real drainage problem in their backyard. I'll give the Reader's Digest to this. The houses, there were 3 right in a row. The bookend houses must have been built since 1980 or whatever, so on their tax bill, they have $42. The house in the middle was pre-1980 and therefore was grandfathered in when these things started and doesn't currently. It's one of those 22% that doesn't have a $42 charge on their bill. Does that make any sense?
It doesn't from a service point or, what you benefit, no.
Yeah, and that's where, the way I understand it, and it's funny because 14 months ago, almost to the day, it was a parting gift to Joe Herbst, that, hey Joe, I know that this is going to be in your bonnet about a town-wide drainage district and the MS4s and all the things that you've already seen. So I said, you know what, Joe, come in and do a presentation at the town board workshop. And he did on February 25th, 2021, and the next day was his last day. And a lot of what he presented, which was memos and letters to the board, it almost is 90% exact to what Pat and Mary and Joe presented tonight, more in a PowerPoint. So it's interesting because if you go back to the tape of that meeting, I think the town board at that time, I just remember them saying, wow, when you look at the fact, if I remember correctly, that when drainage districts started in the 80s, and I'd have to go back and tell you whatever, but the existing developments, existing homes were grandfathered in to not be in a drainage district, to not have that charge on their tax bill. And then as development happened in Webster through the 80s and 90s and whatever, these districts, all new developments are in districts, correct? Since this was rolled out in the 80s?
Yeah, so it's one consolidated district, but it's extended as the
Right.
developments happen.
Exactly, okay, which might help with, this is just, the consolidated district just gets expanded to the grandfathered in houses of 22% from 40, 50 years ago, which hopefully, Charlie, will end up being a very easy legal path, but that remains to be seen. So, by 1990, I'm guessing that with houses being built, that it might have been the exact opposite, that 22% of the residences in town in 1990 were in a drainage district, but 78% were old Webster, still grandfathered in from back in the day. I don't think I need to tell anybody that basically over the last 40 years, the town has grown a lot, there's been a lot of houses built, and somewhere along the lines, as we went from 5,000 residences to 10,000 residences to about 15,000 now, the grandfathered ones remain static, about 3,000. So now, with 15,000 residential units in town, the ones who don't pay into a district are 22%. And it does beg the question, and it begs the question that we asked here 14 months ago when Joe Herbst came in, is that fair?
And I have a question for you. Right?
Yeah, because I'm going to leave that question just hanging out in the air, is that fair? And hand the baton to you, John.
So, with the addition of the 22% of the residents that are currently paying, is that going to cover all your costs for manpower? Will you need additional manpower, do you think?
We certainly do. That's
Yeah.
across the board. And in this area, as I said, the maintenance cycles that we're currently having need to be improved. That would be a great start. It would go a long way to improving that program. The way we would handle that is to take the additional funds, implement them into the program, run the program, see where that brought us for cycles, see how the actual time taken results, and then reassess once that's in there. But it's very, very clear right now that we could have a lot of improvement and still
Right.
probably not be in an ideal situation to really minimize that cost, because the more preventative maintenance we can do versus damage control will actually drive the overall cost of the program down, because you're maintaining, not replacing.
And that's at the $42 fee, correct?
Correct, yeah, we wouldn't propose to change the fee at this time. Again, we would implement the townwide, take those additional funds by incorporating the 22%, and then reassess the overall budget annually, I would say, to make any further adjustments, but it'd be a great start. It'll get us in a much better place.
Thanks, Pat. Mary, thanks.
And I will say that I got to take responsibility for this having gone over time, but as the day progressed yesterday, today, and we saw just how much meat was on the bone to properly present this, it was pretty obvious that 15 minutes was not going to do it justice. So I apologize to Paul and to the chief, who are here for time slots that now are half an hour past. But Jenny, Patty, Bill, any other questions or comments on this?
Not at this time.
No, I don't have anything. I'm sure we'll be having more discussions. As you said, it is something that we've been looking at since Joe Herbst left it with us back in February of '21, and we'll continue to explore it, see where it's going. And I would agree with you, is it fair?
Yeah, and because, Mary, was this another one that right up until about 15 minutes ago, you were doing your magic on bringing pictures in, editing words and all that on this 20-page PowerPoint?
Yeah, someone caught that the printouts were warm when I handed them out,
Yes.
so guilty as charged.
And I'm in this, well, and you know, the guilty as charged is, and mea culpa, we are trying to move in a direction where the department heads come in and give these type of presentations, PowerPoints, colorful, graphic, if you want to call it, less verbiage, because at the end of the day, we want those to go out on our town website, we want them to go out on our social media sites, and almost tell the story to the citizens for us. And the reality is, and I don't know if this makes me cynical, and I love Joe Herbst, when he presented to us 14 months ago, he gave us 7 pages of text and verbiage. And it's all lockstep with that. My cynicism is that if we put this up on the website and social media, that the attention of citizens today in society, they're not going to read that. But we're betting that they will read that, and they'll absorb that, and they will, to us, that's a better communication mechanism between town government and the citizens. The problem is that because we're editing some of these things in the infancy stage of this, right up to a half an hour before, I'm still challenged with this on getting them up 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever, before the actual meeting. My good friend, Charlie Genesi, said, keep working toward it. The law on that gives a lot of flexibility. Do you remember saying that to me?
Sure.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so is that the end of this segment?
Thanks.
Thank you, gang.